Hello everyone, watch this review here where they look at Chief Carnivus, the heroic feline warrior from the Masters of the Universe Classics line. Now this is my first MotUC, or MotUC, however you pronounce it. And, it's in no small part due to the availability, where typically these things sell out in under 40 minutes, sometimes even under half an hour, and, it just takes forever for the page to load, and the whole process is just incredibly aggravating trying to get these things off Matty Collector. So, but in this case, the sale actually lasted the next day. I don't know if there was as much demand, or if they made more of them than usual, but there was most definitely enough Carnivus for the rest of us. Yeah, sorry to those of you who can't stand my bad puns, but couldn't resist. So far, only a handful of MotUCs have really appealed to me, and it's based more on character design than anything else, because I can't really remember the original series, and I haven't watched any of the revamps. Carnivus, of course, is from, I think it was the 90s or the 2000 series. I don't remember offhand. But you're probably wondering, what's the appeal with Chief Carnivus? Well, maybe I just happen to like cat people. Ho! But yeah, the Four Horsemen, the people who sculpt these lines, have done some pretty incredible work with anthropomorphic characters in the past, particularly on their own stuff, like the one line of Minotaur figures they released some years ago that, I still want to pick up, but they always end up closing a little bit expensive, and more recently the Queen's Guard series that introduced a whole bunch of Catwoman, which I still have to pick up one or two of those, but I figured I definitely want to pick up one of their more animal men figures, so I ended up picking Chief Carnivus. So to fans of the character, I really don't know a lot about him, so I'll be commenting mostly on a design standpoint and everything, but without any further ado, I'm going to open this package. Let me start by saying that since this is my first MotUC and everything, my impressions will be, a little bit different than people who've been collecting the line. But the first thing I just want to comment on is the fact that I'd always thought this line was a lot bigger, just because, the way that it had been presented in other reviews and people mentioning the fact that it's on a slightly larger scale than the DC Universe Classics. But when I first saw the package on my doorstep, I wasn't sure what the heck was in it, just because the box is a bit smaller than I'd expect it to be. But for a height comparison, here's Batman, Detective Batman, for Classic Batman from Wave 1 of DC Universe Classics, and Nightwing from it's a reissued one, but it would have originally appeared in the Solomon Grundy wave. But as you can see, the height differential isn't really massive, but I think part of that's just due to Nightwing being pretty tall. Now, I'll bring in Cheetah here, who's a smaller figure, so, she's more the new Titans height or at least the height that they're using for the Titans. So, that's more what I would have expected, but from another comparison, I saw that he was a little bit shorter than the other stuff that the Four Horsemen had released on their own, so, at any rate, I'm not terribly impressed by this figure. I mean, he's got some cool things going for him and all, but, the major downside is just the face, which I think looks a little bit cartoony, but that's probably a good representation of how he was in the animated series. But in terms of personal preference, I would have liked a slightly more realistic face, especially, in light of what I'll put him next to and everything, but he does remind me of that one lion guy from the series Dark Angel, so, it's not all bad. Now, supposedly this figure makes use of the same body as Beastman. Now, given that I don't really collect the series, and I can't really confirm that fact, for all I know, it might as well be based on Stratos. Well, obviously there'd be differences there, but right underneath the armor and stuff, it's supposedly really visible, but the cloak or cape and the armor is all removable if you take off the head, which I don't feel like doing, so I don't think I'll ever display him without the armor. The armor itself is kind of reminiscent of what they did with some of their previous stuff for the Minotaur series and stuff like that. I'm sure the Minotaur series has like a real name, but I just can't recall it at the moment. Of course, I don't think these shin plates are removable. Now, one thing I want to point out too is like it looks like he's got like ankle pivots and then like knee pivots, but I believe that's just due to the quality of the plastic. I don't think that's actually an intentional articulation. Like there's just a little bit extra leeway there and the plastic's thinner, so it won't actually hold like that. Or it might not without snapping, which is kind of a downer. But in terms of accessories, he comes with his shield here with a really fierce looking visage on it. I suppose it's probably to represent some sort of a lion or tiger or another feline beast. As well as this kind of cool, maybe it's a scimitar or something. You know, it's a really nice looking sword. Good quality. Not a tremendous amount of detail, but I assume probably faithful to the original material. Now, as for his hands themselves, they're made of a softer, more pliable rubber, so the sword just fits right in there. Also, it looks like this one wrist is disjointed, which, you know, is kind of annoying, considering that these things are more expensive than your usual figures. Detail-wise, there's really not a lot of paint variation or anything on this character, so I mean, they obviously aren't going for a more realistic look with the MotUC series, I guess. I don't know. And personally, for what I'm looking for, that is a little bit of a downer. In terms of sculpt, you know, it's a pretty serviceable looking sculpt. I mean, they do the fur pretty well. I just don't get what's up with like these glossier areas in some portions against like flatter areas. I'm not sure if they used a different plastic or a different paint. I assume these are probably just cast from the same plastic and they probably used a softer one or something. I don't know. As for the loincloth or whatever and cape here, they're actually different plastics, it feels like. This one's a much softer rubbery plastic. This one is a thicker one, but you know, at certain points it is a thicker material, so he can't like really sit on his cape or anything if you want to pose him seated, which again is kind of a downer, but I guess if you really wanted to, you could just remove the cloak. But then if you remove the cape slash cloak or whatever, I mean, it's not that flattering of a look, because the brooch or pendant sort of really completes that. I don't know. Hair-wise, similar material used for these, but due to the large amount of hair here, head really doesn't move much. Just a quick run through of articulation while I'm talking about it. We have a fully rotating wrist, a pin joint or hinged elbow, a rotating bicep. I mean, it looks like it would be impeded by the shoulder pads, but it's not. A shoulder with, you know, a usual range of motion, but this will be impeded by the shoulder pads. Head already mentioned. We have an ab slash diaphragm joint here for a crunch. Will be impeded going back a little bit. Now these use ball jointed legs, which we don't get on the DC Universe Classics. I mean, it's the kind of like line ball joint though, but no, I guess it is just a normal one. I'm just so used to like having to turn these things where the lines want to go that. So yeah, really good, generous range of motion. Single joint here at the knee, and then down at the foot here we have a normal range of movement for a hinge, and then some sort of a pivot, but I think that's actually breaking the figure, so I probably won't be doing that. Now, I'm not sure what's up with this belt emblem here, because it looks like kind of like a viper, and that kind of goes against the whole cat motif. So, but I mean, that probably ties into the character. Just strikes me as a little bit odd. His little shin guards here, what do you call those? Maybe the words like greaves or greaves, I have no clue. But I mean, they've got kind of a cool decoration as well. I mean, the color choice you know, I mean, purples and reds are both really regal colors. Lions are the proverbial kings of the jungle, despite the fact they don't actually live on jungles, they live in plains. So, I mean, that all really works out well from both a style, thematic angle. Um, in general, I'm not sure, like, the complaints I do have with this figure will pertain directly to the figure itself and not to the MotUC line as a whole. Any area in which I might find faults might not necessarily be an issue specific to this figure, but to the line as a whole, and if you are a fan of the line, I mean, these little things probably don't bother you, but for what he is, the articulation is all very serviceable. I did forget to mention that his purple underoos here do slightly impede the motion because they're different plastic, but he can sit well and stuff, and he can do kicks and the usual sorts of stuff you might pose action figures, except for it can't kick a tremendous amount up that I've seen so far. And I do worry about like this plastic bending outward with time. But I mean, I don't know. Whoa. I mean, it's a decent figure, it's probably just not my cup of tea. Now, for people who do buy into this series, I mean, it's also a pretty pricey series because it's a Matty exclusive, so you have to pay for the shipping and handling and tax. These figures go up for like 20, then by the time all's said and done, you end up paying 31 or 32 for them. So, I mean, for that same price, I can pick up like other stuff I do like a bit more and just like import it from Japan, like the Figma series and stuff like that. So, I probably won't be getting that much into the MotUCs. Although I'll obviously be buying a Battlecat the second that Matty re-releases him, just because Battlecat is freaking awesome. I'll also be picking up the Panther that Skeletor has. I mean, whether or not they decide to flock him, just because I think that was like one of my favorite figures as a kid. I mean, actually, both the cats were, despite the fact that back then they didn't really have any articulation or anything, and they were just like strangely colored cats. But fond childhood memories. But yeah, I guess that's all for now. Until next time, folks.